Ever felt like you were an adult way before you were supposed to be? Well, in this explainer, we're going to dive deep into the psychology of what happens when kids have to grow up way too fast. We'll look at how that early weight of responsibility really truly shapes who they become.
This quote just gets right to the heart of it, doesn't it? For so many, childhood doesn't just vanish in a single moment. It's more like it just quietly fades out. It's this slow, silent process of taking on burdens that were never meant for them, and that one little shift changes absolutely everything.
So as we go through this together, I just want you to think, does any of this feel familiar? Does this sound like a story you've heard before? Or maybe, just maybe, is it your own? It's really all about this quiet moment of realization. There's no big announcement, nobody hands them a rule book. They just look around, see a void where a responsible grown-up should be, and they step up. It's a silent choice that ends up defining their entire life path.
Okay, so what's the first big consequence of making that quiet decision? It's the incredible psychological weight of all that responsibility. Let's really try to understand what's going on inside the mind of a child in that kind of situation.
So psychology actually has a name for this. It's called parentification. And it's so important to get this. This isn't just about doing a few extra chores around the house. No, it's about managing heavy, complex adult emotions. It's about being the mediator, the confidant, the emotional bedrock for a parent, all before your own emotional world has even had a chance to fully bake.
And here's the thing, the human brain is incredibly adaptive. To cope with all that pressure, it learns to suppress its own needs. It gets really good at staying calm, at solving problems. But, and this is the key, it also learns a really painful lesson. Everybody else's feelings matter more. My feelings always come last.
And this brings us to such a critical point. The strength that you see in people who went through this, it wasn't really a choice. They weren't just born strong. They became strong because they had no other option. It was pure survival.
And this thought, this belief gets wired in deep. The very act of receiving care, of being looked after, gets tangled up with guilt. It feels like you're causing a problem for someone else, like you're a burden. That's a heavy, heavy thing to carry with you.
And that core belief, it doesn't just stay a thought. It shows up in very real behaviors. You see adults who constantly downplay their own needs, who literally apologize for asking for help. They even feel guilty for just resting. And the idea of truly leaning on someone else, it can feel completely impossible.
All of this early responsibility basically flips a switch that activates a permanent survival mode. We're talking about our nervous system that learns from a very young age that the world just isn't a reliably safe or supportive place.
You can almost see the dominoes fall here, right? When support isn't a given, you learn pretty quickly that you can only rely on yourself. So over time, you stop asking. You stop expecting comfort. And eventually, you absorb this belief that you just have to handle everything all on your own, no matter what.
Okay, this right here is such a critical insight. For a lot of people who grew up too fast, calm wasn't a good thing. It was the quiet before the storm. Peace was just the thing that happened right before the next crisis. So their nervous system literally learned to connect rest with danger.
And this is exactly what that feels like. Even when everything is okay on the outside, on the inside, all the alarm bells are just blaring. Real, true relaxation feels weird, maybe even unsafe, because your body is still braced for an impact that isn't even coming.
So what does this constant state of high alert do to a person internally? Well, it often creates this fascinating and pretty painful split. It's like you become a story of two different halves living inside the same body. So you have these two distinct selves, coexisting. On the outside, there's the mature self that everyone sees. Competent, serious, incredibly responsible. But that's only half the story. On the inside, there's this unmet self that still feels confused, guilty, and just unfulfilled because its basic emotional needs were never met. They were put on hold indefinitely.
And to protect that really vulnerable inner self, you have to build a shield, a really powerful one. These individuals learn very early on that caring about things without protecting yourself comes at a massive personal cost. So, they stay guarded.
They turn into what you might call a guarded empath. They become absolute masters at reading people and situations. Their emotional radar is razor sharp. They can feel a tiny shift in mood, see a problem coming a mile away. But it's a skill that was born out of a need for protection. They keep that guard up because they know how much it hurts when it comes down.
This all leads us to the most important question, right? What in the world does healing look like? Well, it starts with something simple: permission.
Permission to see this whole experience not as some personal flaw, but as an incredible feat of adaptation.
Now this is the big reframe, and I really want this to sink in. If any of this is resonating with you, the single most important thing to hear is this: you are not broken. You are not flawed. Your entire being did exactly what it needed to do to survive an unbelievably high-pressure environment. It adapted perfectly.
It's almost as if you learned life completely backward. Most people get to learn about safety first, and then they learn responsibility. They experience softness first, and then they build strength. For anyone who grew up too fast, that entire order was flipped on its head. And that brings us to what might be the most powerful message of all. The whole point of healing isn't to get rid of the strength you had to build. It's about finally learning that it's okay. It's okay to be supported. And most importantly, it's okay to rest. You're allowed to.
And so, we'll end right here with a final question for you to think about. If this story feels like your story, if you grew up caring more than any child ever should, just ask yourself, are you still carrying all of that weight today? And could it finally be time to set it